is Sophie, and I am a 19-year-old mom. And in this video, we're going to be discussing my tips for labor and delivery as well as postpartum when you get home from the hospital. So let me start with telling you a little bit about my labor and delivery. I went into labor at 8:30 in the morning. My water broke, and I wasn't sure because it didn't happen like it does on TV, where it's just like and there's like a big puddle and there's like a huge rush to get to the hospital and everything like that. I just stood up from bed and kind of felt like I was peeing myself, but I knew I wasn't peeing myself. And so I went and I used the bathroom, and when I stood up, that's when there was like a huge gush in a puddle. But it wasn't just like one gush, it just like continued to like flow out, which is something I didn't know that happened. So I went in the room and I told my fiance, I was like, oh my gosh, I think my water just broke. And so I called the labor hotline and they told me to go see my OBGYN and just make sure that my water actually did break and something else wasn't happening. And she confirmed that my water had broke, and from there we went straight to the hospital. And I think we got to the hospital around 12-ish in the afternoon. So I got admitted and I hadn't had any contractions yet, just like very like mild like crampy feeling, like period cramp feeling. And so I got admitted and I was laying there and my contractions started coming, but they were irregular. So they administered me Pitocin, which made my contractions more regular, and it literally felt like I couldn't catch a break. It like felt like it was contractions back to back to back to back, and there was like no end. And usually you're supposed to breathe through the contractions, make it a lot better. I was trying to have like natural. I didn't want any epidural, any IV drip. I didn't want anything, and I definitely didn't want a C-section. So I was pretty determined, and my nurse was like, keep an open mind. I'm new to this. Like, I had no idea how bad contractions hurt, which they hurt pretty bad. And so once I got 3 centimeters dilated, or maybe 3 or 4, I started like wrenching and vomiting, and I didn't eat that morning. So I was literally like throwing up my like stomach bile, which is like probably TMI and really gross, but it made it really hard for me to breathe through my contractions. So I think I got to 5 centimeters and I just couldn't do it anymore. I was done, and I was like, please give me an epidural. I chose the epidural over an IV drip because I heard the IV drip kind of makes you like loopy, and I wanted to be like fully present for my delivery. And so I got the epidural, and that was a game changer. I literally could not feel anything. I could no longer feel my contractions. I was happy, I was smiling, I was just chilling on my phone, and the nurse came in and she checked and she was like, I think you're ready to push. So I started pushing around 6 p.m. that day, the same day, and yeah, I started pushing at 6, and he was ready to come out because he was literally pushing himself out. Like, when you push, you do sets of 3, and you take a deep breath and push for, I think, like 10 seconds, and then you do it again, and then a third time, and then you take a breath for until your next contraction or something. I'm not really sure. And he only took 4 sets of 3, and he was delivered at 6:41 p.m. So I only pushed for about like 40 minutes, which was not bad at all. And toward the end, he was literally like pushing himself out. So yeah, that I had a pretty easy delivery, labor and delivery for my first time, which I'm super glad about, because when I was still seeing my OB prior to going into labor, once I hit full term, she was like, well, he can come anytime, but your contractions can last anywhere from like 12 to 24 hours before they're regular enough for you to go to the hospital, because it's supposed to be, I think, like every 5 minutes for a minute long or something like that is how your contractions are supposed to be before they tell you to go to the hospital. So I was definitely glad that my water broke and that I didn't have contractions until later, because if I was sitting at home having contractions for 24 hours, I probably would have died. Even if my labor was longer than, how long was it? I don't know, 8 to 6. If it was longer than that, then I probably would have died. So to start off my advice, once you go into labor, I would strongly advise you to eat. Eat a meal. Eat a good big meal before you go into the hospital, because once you're admitted into your room, you can no longer eat anything except for ice chips, and they gave me ginger ale. I don't know if your hospital would give you that, but if you have a long labor, then it's literally going to be terrible, because you're not eating for as long as it is. So if you end up with like a 24-hour ordeal, then you're not eating for 24 hours. So eat before you're admitted. My second bit of advice would be to stay on top of your contractions. Your contractions come regularly, so whether they're every 2 minutes, or sometimes they come irregularly, which makes it kind of hard, but usually they're pretty regular. They come every 2 minutes, every 5 minutes, every whatever, and you can stay on top of them. Once your contraction is done, you can be like, oh, I have a next one in however long, let me prepare myself mentally and physically. Like, it's best to relax your body. It was hard for me to relax my body again, because I was like wrenching and vomiting between my contractions, so there was no real like relaxed time for me, which made the epidural like so much of a better option for me. If you plan on breastfeeding, then it's not as easy as it seems. I heard everybody telling me like, don't give up, whatever, like if you really want to breastfeed, you gotta stick with it. And I was sitting there thinking like, how hard can it be to attach a kid to your boob and just feed them? Like, it can't be that hard. But it is. It really is. When he first came out, he latched on right away, and I was like, yay, I got it. But once we got to our room, he like instantly forgot how to latch, and I spent the whole 2 days we were in there trying to get him to latch, and it was so frustrating. I was exhausted. He wasn't latching. I was worried because he wasn't eating, and which I later found out is okay for them not to be eating, because they allow like a brief period like for them to lose weight, and then eventually they'll gain it back. So like he was born at 7 pounds 3 ounces. No, 7 pounds 3 ounces. Then he dropped to 6 pounds 9 ounces, and then 2 weeks later he was back up to 7, or no, he was back up to 8 pounds 3 ounces. And so when you're in the hospital and you're worried and you don't know if he's supposed to be eating or not, you think he's supposed to be eating, you think you're starving him, you can't get him to latch, you're tired, it's frustrating, just relax and know that eventually he will latch or she will latch. It just takes time for them to learn, and by the time I was ready to give up and say I can't do this, he latched, and it was literally the best moment of my life. I was about to cry, I was frustrated, I was done, and he just latched on, and ever since he's been breastfeeding perfectly. So yeah, that's all my advice for labor and delivery. And so now we're going to be talking about postpartum, both in the hospital and when you get home. So in the hospital, I packed in my hospital bag, I packed some maternity pads as well as like, they're sort of like, well, they are diapers, but they're the really thin ones that are supposed to look like underwear. I'll put a picture right here, but I put a couple of those in there, and I was wearing those with maternity pads in them. But what I didn't realize is your hospital, or my hospital, gave me a lot of the materials that I needed for postpartum. They provided me with like maternity pads, disposable underwear. They provided me with a peri bottle, which was amazing. The peri bottle is basically like, I'll put a picture here, but it's pretty standard for postpartum. Mostly everybody gets one. It's like a little bottle that you fill with water, and after you deliver, it helps you clean down there because you can't really wipe because it hurts. So yeah, and I also bought a second one. I kept the one that they gave me at the hospital by my toilet, so when I finished using the bathroom I could spray and clean, but I also bought one for my shower that I used to clean down there and make sure everything was nice and fresh while I was showering, because also it's very sore and painful after you deliver, so you don't really want to go down there and roughly clean like you usually would. You want to be very delicate, and the peri bottle helps a lot with that. And my last little bit of advice would be to make sure, like, once you hit full term, make sure that everything in your house is prepared. Make sure your baby's bassinet or cradle or crib or whatever he's going to be sleeping in is prepared in your room. Make sure that if you're going to be bottle feeding, that you have a bunch of bottles clean and ready. Make sure that your house is clean and prepared for you to just come home and relax. And also, another good thing to have is like microwavable meals, or just like very easy things to make when you're home alone, if you're going to be home alone, because I know for me, I was very tired, I didn't feel like dealing with it, and once you're home, it's like, even sometimes it's like sore to walk or like stand up, and your whole bottom half is just sort of like disoriented. So it's like, it was annoying for me to like clean first of all, which is why you should have like your house prepared. Also, with a newborn, it's very difficult to find the time to clean and make sure everything is good in your house, because you're tired, you're with your newborn, when he's sleeping, you're sleeping, when he's awake, you're dealing with him. So it's very nice to have a clean house, easy meals that you can just pop in, eat, and then go to sleep. And yeah, so that's all my advice that I have. So before I end this video, I'd like to introduce you to my baby boy. This is Horatio. He is now almost 2 months, and he's about 12 pounds, when he might be more than that. I really don't know. When I took him for his 1 month checkup, he was 11 pounds 3 ounces, so I'm just guessing he probably weighs more than that. He's a big boy. He's a big chunky monkey. And he is probably the best baby ever. He barely cries. He gets a little fussy sometimes, but he's been sleeping through the night for me, mostly. He goes to sleep about 10 and sleeps till 4, so that is amazing for a newborn. So yeah, this is Horatio. He is a 5th, so for a nickname we're calling him Cinco, and yeah, this is my baby. So thank you guys for watching. If you want to see more from me, make sure you leave a comment on what you would like to see. I should be posting videos more regularly now. I just had to get in the kick of having a newborn baby, which was very new to me. I'm a brand new mom. So yeah, thank you for watching. See you in the next video.